Okay, hey, this is Wire with Creative Habits Podcast. And in this live, we're going to try to answer the question, what's the difference? We're going to look at tech, but we're going to try to answer the difference. Like, what's the difference between using your built-in webcam, something like a Logitech webcam, using a DSLR, or using a mirrorless Sony A6000? So we're going to go through all that and hopefully kind of answer the question, what is the difference? Okay, so that's my little sting. I'm thinking about improving that one. But anyway, okay, so this is really cool. I did a lot of like work to try to set this up because I've got, you can't see it, but I've got a Sony A6000, the Logitech, the Canon, and then I've got the built-in webcam. And I'm going to go through each of these because I think visually, a lot of people talk about specs and all that kind of stuff. And although your setup may be differently, because I'm using a lot of natural light, you'll see I could adjust this a little bit to get a little more dimension or, contrast. It's kind of a little flat right now. And that's why, one of the reasons to go from, using something like a Logitech, which we're on right now, to something like a digital SLR is to get more of a cinematic look. And although that cinematic look will be really hard to achieve within a Facebook Live, the digital a DSLR or mirrorless A6000 is going to get you closer to that look. And what I mean by cinematic is that contrast that you'll get. So between the background and you having a little bit of blur in the background, also having a little more contrast so that the shadows that you create offer a dimension that's not as flat as something like you're getting right now. Now, all of this, if you really want to look at cinematic, photography and cinematic like video, you have to get into a lot more things. Like here, I'm going to show you Peter McKinnon. I love Peter McKinnon. He is awesome. I'm sure you guys know about him, but if you don't, you should definitely check out his YouTube channel. But here is Peter McKinnon. I went and searched cinematic, and you'll see on there that a lot of this is focused on, that the initial results are focused on Photoshop, using Premiere Pro, using quality, really expensive cameras, or using like ND filters and such. Okay, so that's where the whole tech, you don't want to get confused by the tech. My whole premise here is that people get confused a lot of different ways between the tech and also using Facebook Lives to reach more people and to, broaden their audience and just, its whole business aspect. And my premise is don't go there first. Look at engagement and looking at developing your voice and developing your message on camera so that you can do all of that, get engagement without the tech and without the editing. And once you have that, the tech and the editing are an add-on that enhances all of that skill that you've developed by leveraging Facebook Lives. So that's why Ecamm Live is so awesome, because you're able to be an old school DJ in the digital era. You're able to pull in those elements like I did with the Sting, like I did with Peter McKinnon. And a lot of that has to do with getting an initial setup and don't get distracted by it. But even so, you still want to have some basics in place. And so far, through podcasting and through using different equipment, I've come up with, okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm probably going to switch to the Canon that I've got, the A6000. I'll show you in a second the difference between them, but I think it gives a greater look. Now, I wasn't able to use the Canon necessarily because the autofocus, I never... it had the little box for the autofocus had gotten away. But guess what? Ecamm Live came to the rescue because a recent update made it possible for me to connect my Canon without anything else, and it autofocuses without the little box. Now, some of you may be able to say, Oh, you should have been able to figure that out. I didn't, I spent some time on it. I tried to figure it out and I got it so it was on manual focus and the box went away, right? But I never got to that place. And I spent $125 on getting the cam link so that I could use my A6000. Now, I haven't tested the A6000 with Ecamm's Live's update, but I have used the Canon and it's awesome. So thank you, Ecamm Live, for that. I can see them coming out with some more updates that are really cool. So wanted to get into it though. The cinematic part, a lot of this comes from lighting. Now I'm using natural lighting. I'm going to show you in a little bit what Peter McKinnon's setup is. Very simple, but also cinematic at the same time. That gives you, again, that depth. But first, let's go through the different cameras while I've got you in your interest. Okay, so right now we're looking at the Logitech. The Logitech C920 is awesome. And hands down, if you're looking for something, that's the one to get. Because if you're just starting out, it's inexpensive, around 50, 60 bucks, and yet it produces a pretty good result. I mean, I can go ahead and, alter the light a bit, maybe a bit more, and get a little more dimensionality, but I'm dealing with natural light, so I don't have a lot of leeway. Okay, so I'm going to bring this back up. But, okay, so that's the Logitech. Okay, now let me show you. I'm going to go to, this is, the webcam. Now I'm not going to show that very long because it's kind of messy. But that's the webcam, and the built-in webcams are always awful. Just bad. Again, back to the Logitech. Okay, now I'm going to show you, if all goes well, I'm going to show you the A6000. It's going to take a second here because I'm turning it on. Just. Okay. So should be able to do that then. Okay, ready? Here we go. A6000. Okay, so this is the A6000. You'll see a bit of difference between that and the Logitech, and it's hard to describe, so that's why it's kind of cool being able to bounce between them. I like the look. I think it's crisper, and I think it gives it more dimensionality. You don't get the flatness so much. There's a lot of light coming in here, and the Sony generally in low light doesn't do as well. So on this day, I'm getting a ton of light, so it's really good. I really love natural light, so that's why I try to go for it. Okay, so that's the Sony A6000. Okay, this is a mirrorless camera and awesome to have. So fast. You can go on and on about the A6000. Love that one. But let's go back. All right, we're back to the Logitech. I'm going to turn off the A6000. Okay, now we're going to go to the Canon. I'm going to set that up. And with... Come on. Here we go. Okay, now this one I have on some books. So, I couldn't set up all of them exactly, the best way possible. You'll see some lag though. You notice that there's a bit of lag there, and I think that might be improved over time, and it may have to do with my setup more than it does Ecamm Live. But still, that if you look, that's one complaint that a lot of people will have is that lag, and there's a lot of different reasons for lag time, adjustments you can make to streaming and so on. But in general, you'll see the Canon is really cool. I really like the look of the Canon even more so than the A6000. But, okay, so that's the Canon. This is a T4i, Rebel T4i, inexpensive, somewhat older base level Canon camera. So, okay, so we've got all those in play, right? Now we're back to the Logitech. I wanted to, so isn't that cool? I mean, isn't that cool being able to see that? Now I wanted to, oops, I gotta adjust this. I wanted to go back to the reason why, if you look at, went on to Ecamm Live, which again, their Facebook group is great. And here, Andrea had asked the question, I'm doing Facebook Lives on the Ecamm on my Mac with built-in video, and it looks so-so. I want to buy a camera instead. What do you guys have? What do you recommend? So that got me thinking, okay, well, what are the different looks that you can achieve? And a lot of times when people answer, it's they'll talk about the camera. and it's hard to see to recognize the difference. It's all in the brain. So that's why having a visual, like being able to go through the different cameras and see visually how they compare. Now again, setups do make a difference, but do you see this? This doesn't have the same lag that the Canon did. Okay, so it's an interesting question, the camera question, and the reason you shouldn't get tied up into it is because initially, I think anyway, you should leverage Facebook Live's the simplicity of it and using Ecamm Live to basically, again, get that voice, get that confidence on camera, and get down your system for creating these engaging videos. Then, using technology, using different equipment enhances that. Now, beyond the visuals are the sound. And I wanted to just do a quick little comparison, because one of the things Andrea and I in that question and answer on Ecamm Live went back and forth, and I said, well, you should be sure to use the Blue Yeti for your setup. And she said, well, I have the Blue Yeti. I used it in the video. It was awful. And I'm like, well, it might be settings, because the Blue Yeti actually has a lot of volume. But besides volume, there's the setting that where it picks up on the mic itself. So you need to be speaking in the right place. And there's also the gain. They actually have a gain. So she had acknowledged that as a podcaster, she'd been using it with podcasting and hadn't made that adjustment. She'd been speaking closely, I don't know, to it and getting a good result. And the thing of it is, I'm actually might be topping out, it looks like, from this. I'm gonna maybe lower this a little bit. Anyway, so she said she was getting a good result while podcasting, but not on the video. So she was going to go back and adjust that. But that's the thing; these adjustments you can make. But I wanted to, a lot of times when you're researching, again, just as with the cameras, it's like people will talk about the difference, and you might may or may not understand all the technical jargon that'll be thrown at you. But when you can see it and when you can hear it, then you know. So that's why I wanted to do, okay, here I'm using the Yeti microphone, and I'm going to go now to I'm now on the built-in microphone. Now, I can't hear the difference. You may be able to hear the difference right now. I'm going to go back and see if there is much of a difference. I believe there is. I think the Blue Yeti gives you a richer sound, but you do have to play with like how you have it set up, your mouth and like the gain. And I might have the gain up a little too much on this, but built-in microphone also, you just don't get the same richness. And hopefully you can hear that. I'm going to go back to okay, now I'm back to the Yeti, back to the Yeti, back to the Yeti, back to the built-in microphone, back to the built-in microphone. Okay. So that hopefully I don't know if that's going to be a good difference. There's other, if it's not, then I'll do some other testing so you can kind of hear the difference, but not to get hung up on the tech, because again, the whole idea of doing these lives is to basically get your voice down, and it's cool playing with it, but it's definitely not something where you'd want to like get too trapped into that. Develop voice over the time, and then you play with tech and develop it. Don't get perfect. Don't go for the perfection. The whole idea, like yesterday, I realized that you always see the mistakes you can do, and you get overwhelmed by all the mistakes that'll happen between lives that you do. And instead of getting more overwhelmed by that, picking just one element that you can improve the next time and then improve that. My face was pretty red last time, and I didn't really have the lighting quite right. Didn't look too good. Anyway, lighting is the next thing, and I use natural light. I'm going to show you Peter McKinnon's simple setup in a second, so show you that. But this natural light I really like. It gives you, I'll adjust this a bit so you can go back to not getting washed out so much. I like natural light because it gives you, I think, it's less technical. You get a better look, I think. And a lot of people will say, oh, you need 3-point lighting, and you try to get the hair light and the front light and the sides. And you'll see Peter McKinnon's setup in just a second. And when you see that, you'll realize, okay, simplicity is key. And one of the reasons he's able to keep that simplicity is because of the equipment he uses, the lenses. And that's why you'd want to use a digital SLR instead of a webcam, is because you can actually use different lenses that provide sweet effects. I've got a 24 millimeter Canon lens on that, and I really like that. It's wide angle and it gives you that effect that you would want to go for. So anyway, check out Peter McKinnon's. Okay, let's bring this up. Here's Peter McKinnon in his simple setup, right? He's got a Canon C200, and he's got this other light. So he just has one light. I mean, isn't that cool? Very simple. He's positioned just right to get it so that he has a really nice cinematic effect. But again, he's able to achieve that cinematic effect not only from this lighting and the placement and all that type of light he uses, but also from the lens and then positioning with the background. But anyway, it's very simple, right? He doesn't overcomplicate it, which is, you'll see some people, if you look, some people have like tons of lights, tons of different cameras and all these things that you're doing, that simple rules a day, and again, develop over time maybe, but isn't that cool? I mean, one light, and if you get it positioned correctly and you have your setup nicely done, you can actually get away with one light. Or now I'm not saying like this lighting right now is the best, but it's better than if you try for that artificial lighting. In my mind, I sacrifice a bit of maybe, using the Logitech, I sacrifice a lot, but you can see the difference. Let's go back. No, we won't do that. Okay, so there it is. The lighting itself. A lot of people, what they do with lighting is they'll just use a ring light. And it's very simple, inexpensive to use, and it goes, above or behind the camera. More likely above. You have to position your lighting according to where you're at. But isn't that cool? It's so simple. You get a good mic, a webcam, maybe a digital SLR that you would use anyway. But it's great, and you can use your iPhone. The problem is that you end up using a couple different other pieces of things, and I haven't experimented around with that too much, so I'm not going to talk about that. But isn't that cool? I mean, very simple setup, very simple solution. There's your tech for you. Not to concentrate on it too much, because you can improve it over time. Check out Peter McKinnon, because his lighting, and he's just a master of the whole thing, getting that cinematic look. It's a setup that takes time. So rather than trying to get it perfect, go for getting your voice down and processing. We're gonna next time we'll be going into kind of like, it's not really a formula, but it is kind of a formula that. And I'll show you different YouTubers who kind of use this same thing. And what they talk about is, you get the vanity metrics. You think, oh, I want all these views. Well, if you look, 3-second, 5-second views, those aren't going to do too much for you. You're looking for that engagement. And that's why the Facebook Live experiment is going to be fun to see if I can get that. And if you're following along, you can go to creativehabitspodcast.com/FB experiment and do the same Facebook Live and basically see if you can get that engagement, because that's where it's at. And part of that is inserting, getting the skills where you insert open loops, which I'll explain, and hooks and story. And that's an art, a craft that technology then enhances. But go for developing that out first. So we'll talk about that in the next Facebook Live, which is tomorrow. Look for the time on the Creative Habits Podcast page. But the whole idea, again, is just to get down the skill of doing that, make it engaging and interesting without editing. And then editing and technology, all that just brings a lot more to the whole game. So see you next time. Be sure to go and subscribe either go to the page and like it, or you can go to creativehabitspodcast.com/FB experiment, and it's there. You can sign up either with Messenger or email and get a little PDF guide, and follow along. And at the end of 30 days, after doing this for a while, incremental improvements, and I'll show you different things, especially in the Facebook group. If you join the Facebook group, in there, actually go behind the scenes with more of using Ecamm Live, some of the settings you can do, and exploring all that. So be sure to join the group, and I'll see you tomorrow in the next Facebook Live with the 30-day Facebook Live experiment. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you next time.